This is the CHGO Cubs podcast. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan. We are coming to you on Sunday, June 16th. Brendan, the Cubs lose 2 series this week, and I got to be honest. Let's jump right into it. There's plenty to talk about, but a lot of it we focused on. We'll talk about, Jamison Tyone has been pretty good. Michael Busch looking pretty good. We'll talk about all that. Brendan, this offense is dreadful. This offense is dreadful, and the way that all of these games are some variation of the same theme, this is excruciating baseball that we are watching from this team.
Over the last month, dating back to May 16th, exactly 1 month, the Cubs have the lowest batting average in Major League Baseball at 212, the lowest slugging percentage in the National League at 331, the lowest weighted on base average in National League at 279. We thought, okay, going into the year, there's a range of possibilities. This is on the extreme end. I am surprised, even though I may have been a little pessimistic going into the year, that it's even been this bad. It's unacceptable. If I'm the front office looking at this roster as it is right now, I'm on edge. I'm very nervous because this is inspiring some potential changes if it continues.
So the Cubs lose 2 out of 3 in Tampa. They lose 2 out of 3 to start this 9-game homestand against the Cardinals. And as our friend in the YouTube chat, Gary, pointed out, the Cardinals scored 6 runs in this series, Brendan, and that is enough for them to take a series in your ballpark. It's a situation where a lot of the guys that are playing every day are going to continue to play every day. They need to be better. But the brand of baseball that this team has been playing is just truly dreadful to watch. They can't score more than a few runs. When they do, it's either not enough, right? And then you have games like today where they didn't end up scoring, or they only ended up scoring the 1, but they get the tying run or the winning run to the plate or on base in the 9th. They do that all the time. We love a good fake rally. Or they're up 2-0 the whole game, and then you're just waiting for the bullpen to blow it. Like we talked about when I was in studio with Luke and Cody and Ryan during the Tampa series, they needed that belly homer that won them that game. Occasionally, you need to get bailed out by somebody that just hits a 3-run home run and salvages the game. But you look at the way that they even won this week, Brendan, it was the same thing. A bunch of runners left on base, 1, 2, 3 innings, etc. And then in the only one you won against St. Louis, Hap bailed you out and hit the homer that put you up by 4. Everybody in this YouTube chat or listening to our podcast later, first of all, welcome. Thank you for spending your Sunday and yelling with us. Brendan, none of you could look me in the eye before the Hap homer and tell me you didn't think that they were going to blow that game on Saturday for Shota Imanaga, because they were going to, but they got enough of a cushion from the Hap ball that got out that even that bullpen wasn't going to blow it. But it was the same game. Shota is unbelievable. He's giving you everything he has, but the margin for error for these starting pitchers is microscopic. Brendan, so microscopic you couldn't even see it in one of your laboratories that you're in. And it's every day. It's just, and I don't think it would be more enjoyable if they were like in slugfests that they were losing 7-6, but watching them get 3 hits, 4 hits, and score 1 or 2 runs every day it's excruciating baseball that we are watching.
It's the most excruciating stretch of baseball I can remember, maybe since the tail end of 2018 during that offensive funk. And even then, this seems more severe in the duration of the stretch. I'm trying to find some reason for optimism. I can't do it, Corey. I can't.
Yeah.
The main reason is when I look at the rest of the season projections, right now they're projected to be a couple games below 500, in part with weighted on base average projections of Seiya above 350, average run production from Morel and Dansby, and the rest of the crew, and even above average offense from Bellinger. That is still producing an expected record below 500.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know. You can easily start spiraling, but I don't know how the front office can proceed with this current group as constructed. At the same time, I'm not sure it can be changed, which is the darkest of darkest thoughts. If this is one roster that you're just going to have to eat and hope and pray things turn around. I'm in a dark spot, man. I feel bad for
Yeah.
all of us. I really do. I'd like
So
to thank the chat for tuning in, though,
yeah, we
and
do appreciate you
supporting
being
this.
here. And
Yeah.
we're gonna commiserate. We will get into some of the player specifics. I want to talk about some of the starting pitchers and some of the performances that we're seeing. I don't want to just yell for an hour, but this was one of those episodes where I needed to come on hot because I'm tired of this, dude. It
You're
is
not even
this.
coming on hot. You can
No,
come on
they
hotter
deserve
if you
it.
want.
I mean, honestly, it should be hotter. Yeah, you're
It
right.
really should be.
But a couple things I want to focus on. And I saw a comment earlier from Tyler in the YouTube chat, and he said, "Kudos to the pitching staff for holding it down and not cracking under the pressure of having to be perfect." Absolutely. I mean, credit to this starting staff and really largely the bullpen. I know people get frustrated when they blow games, and occasionally the bullpen does need to do their job. You can't just excuse them every time it's a close game because the offense doesn't score enough. The number one issue with this team is absolutely the offense. It
Yeah.
puts everybody at a disadvantage. It's definitely the number one issue. Occasionally, though, you do need your bullpen to lock down a one-run game. That can't always be the excuse. But largely, like, this pitching staff has done really good work under that exact premise that they have to be perfect. You look at the games this week, you got 6 innings, 3 hits, no runs from Justin Steele. Then you go to the next game in Tampa, you got, that is the Rays box score. Javier Assad, 4 and
They're all
2/3,
the same
2
box
earned
scores, by
runs.
the way. You could be saying a box score from 3 weeks ago. It's the
You
same
wouldn't
outcome.
know.
You
Yeah.
have no
So that's a
idea.
short outing from Assad, but that's kind of what he's been giving you, and he still only gives up 2 runs. Then you go to the finale in Tampa, or maybe I have the order wrong. Don't sue me. 6 innings, 4 hits, no runs, 1 walk, 5 Ks from Tyone. A very similar line to Justin Steele with the 1 walk and 5 Ks and the 6 innings. Then to start the Cardinals series, Jordan Wicks gets hurt, which is a bummer, and we'll talk about that later in the show. But he goes 1 2/3, 2 hits, no runs. Kyle Hendricks comes out of the bullpen. Kyle Hendricks in 2024 comes out of the bullpen and gives you 4 1/3, 2 hits, no runs, and that is not good enough to win the game because your offense scores 0 runs. Yesterday, Shota, magnificent, as usual, as always, 7 innings, 1 run, 4 hits. They do end up winning that game, but he's leaving the game in a situation where it's 2-1. They have a razor thin lead in that game, and you felt like they were on path to blow it, 1-0, whatever it was. They all blend together. Then in the finale today, Jamison Tyone, for the second time this week, really good. 6 innings, 7 hits, 2 earned, 2 walks, 3 Ks. His FIP is not probably where you want it to be. Gave up a, cheapy kind of home run there. But that is enough for the Cardinals to win this game. A homer off of the bat of a guy hitting with a 500 OPS is enough for them to solidly shut down this Cubs offense. I don't know what more this starting staff, and really the pitching staff in general, is supposed to do in these games. The pitching staff has been doing everything they can, and they are getting absolutely nothing from this offense. I want to read something that was on the marquee broadcast, and this is where you talk about hope and believing and all this other stuff. And you can still believe, you can be chasing a wild card spot, the division, whatever. As Luke
You trying
Stuckmeyer
to be
always says,
optimistic right now?
no, fan how you want to fan. I'm going to say
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you what to feel. People want to give up on them now, fine. If you want to be a believer, fine. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But since April 27th, Brendan, we are recording this podcast on June 16th, for context. And also, just as a reminder, there are 30 teams in Major League Baseball. Let me read some ranks to you of where this Chicago Cubs team stands. Win percentage, 28th out of 30. Runs a game, 3.5, 29th out of 30. Batting average, 214. Dead last, 30th out of 30. Slugging percentage, 341. Dead last, 30th out of 30. Average with runners in scoring position, 170. 30th. Dead last in baseball. we have come on here and said certain guys have to be better if they play to their career norms, and you do have a handful of them that are not playing to that level. Dansby, Hap, Cody Bellinger, even if you're just doing it relative to his sort of resurgence last year, they have to perform that way. But Brendan, we are going on almost 2 months of this team just kind of inarguably being bad.
I don't know if the thought I'm wrestling with is I don't know if there's room for optimism in a rebound with this group. It's possible, but it requires such a change from what you've read in the past 6 weeks. How do you get this team from top to bottom to produce at not just league average, but well above league average to get you beyond some of these win projection numbers at some point? There's a lot of ire towards Dansby Swanson's output, a lot of ire towards Nico Horner's output. There's frustration with how Seiya Suzuki takes his at-bats at times. There's frustration with Cody Bellinger not matching his second half performance from last season. There's a ton of frustration at the catching core with Miguel Amaya and Yan Gomes being two of the worst offensive and defensive catchers in the league right now. There's still even ire at Ian Happ not showing, for some reason, maybe better than real expectations production on a consistent basis. There's so many room for improvement across this roster. It seems just unlikely to happen. Then the question is, can this happen, or can signs of improvement happen before the trade deadline? If the Cubs are 4 games under 500, does it make sense to go over the luxury tax, start that cycle, if you're not seeing Dansby Swanson elevate the ball more, or if you're not seeing Cody Bellinger and Seiya Suzuki show the same type of offensive production from the second half? It seems like that timeline is going to be here before you blink your eyes. It's almost 3-4 weeks away, and difficult decisions will have to be made. That's where I can't grow my optimism. And I can't lie. If I'm going to talk about this team to a fan who's not covering this team, then my one sentence explanation would be doom and gloom. They are performing well below expectations. Unfortunately, that is probably going to result in people getting fired unless something extreme changes. And that's always a possibility, but it is extreme by nature.
Yeah, and you look at this week too, and some of it is small samples. Guys are sometimes in relief spots, then their spot starting, etc. But I know for a fact, at least this week, the Rays started 2 guys against you that had an ERA over 5 coming into the game. Mikolas had an ERA sitting around 4.5 coming into the game. You're just not doing good enough work against pitchers that are not that good, and that other teams are finding ways to score a serviceable amount of runs off of. I mean, at this point, we're not even asking for an offensive onslaught. Just score 5 runs a few times.
But you know what? The worst part about doing these shows is I feel
Talking
like
about the Cubs.
Well, that first off, of course, but it's when we come on here and we talk, like we've been talking about the same thing for the past 6 weeks. And it seems so like generalized at this point. Like, oh, they need to score runs off these types of pitchers. Mikolas has this poor number. Kyle Gibson sucked last year. It's like duh. Like, of course. Like, I'd rather talk about who's performing well that can get this group to the next tier. And we don't have those talking points anymore. That's the most discouraging part about this. Of course, the unit needs to perform, but we're not even seeing signs from anyone that can get this team to that point. It's almost like this almost feels like dead weight conversation. I know it's not good audio to have, but that's really what I feel like right now. It's a sucky place to be.
It's absolutely just it's what this team is kind of demanding at the moment. So I mean, even you go back and look kind of from their schedule. So you go back to, let's say, that middle of May series against the Pirates. You lost 3 of 4 in Pittsburgh. So that was kind of one of the starts of this. You lost 2 of 3 to the Braves. You lost 2 of 2 to the Cardinals. You lost 3 of 4 in Milwaukee. Then you had the series at home against the Reds. You lost 2 of 3 there. You beat the Chicago White Sox, so congratulations to everybody. You managed to beat the worst team in
Barely.
baseball by a single run
Barely.
every night. So great. Then you lost another 3 of 4 to the Reds, 2 of 3 to the Rays, 2 of 3 to the Cardinals. So as we've been updating, that is a lot of series losses. That's a ton of just lost series outside of that White Sox 2-game set. Then you look at it again, and when you look at the standings, right now they are 2 games out of the final wild card spot.
Yeah,
so,
with
again,
7 teams above them.
Sure, I'm getting to that. By all intents and purposes, they're in that race. There's no question about it. If you're within 2 games, you're in a race. Now, the caveat, though, and why I read off all those series results, you look at the teams that are ahead of you, even just right now in that race. You're behind the Reds, you're behind the Cardinals, of course, you're behind the Brewers in the division, and you are tied with the Pittsburgh Pirates. That's all you're doing, brother. If you wanted to just jump those teams in the race, not necessarily be above 500 or solidly holding on to a playoff spot, but just be ahead of all 3 of those teams, winning those series, man. And all you have done against your own competition in your division and teams immediately with you in this wild card race is lose. Lose 2 out of 3, lose 3 out of 4. You are not even taking care of your own business. So when you look at those standings, sure, they're still in it. But the reason they're not even in a better position amongst those 7, 8 teams in the NL wildcard race is because they can't beat them. They're not taking care of business beating those teams in that race.
Do you think it's random? Do you think it's something that you would expect going forward, this type of poor offense? What does your gut tell you? Do you think it eventually turns around fast enough? Honestly. And it's sad you have to think about it like that.
I really
that
don't know
pause is a very
because
sad
I
pause.
do think, look, you look at some of these numbers. I mean, Haps, OPS, even with the homer now sitting in the 600s, Dansby's in the 630s, Cody's in, the mid 700s or wherever his is. They can be better than that. They have numerous years of experience in this league being better than that. But then you have to ask the question, and I think it was good that we talked about the starting pitching. How long can you ask them to do that? How long can you and so if the offense does come around, isn't it fair that the pitching staff would see, the starting staff at least, would see a little bit of aggression? Javier Assad, even though he's not going deep into games, has been great for you. Shota's been one of the best pitchers in baseball. Justin Steele, after those first 3 starts where he was working back from a hamstring injury, has looked like vintage Justin Steele. He's been great. Jamison Tyone, even though his FIP, there's some discrepancies there, he's got like a 3.5 ERA and is like a really significant portion of starts, like going back to like last August. He's been pretty good for you. Certainly worthy of being, what, a 4-5 in this rotation?
Sure.
Jordan Wick's getting hurt. It's a bummer. Ben Brown, it's a bummer. But those guys have given you good starts too. How long can you ask these guys to all go out there and give quality starts every time? You have to expect a little bit of regression from some of those guys. So even if the offense comes around, I don't know. To me, again, what I remain most frustrated about is that it wasn't just you and me. It wasn't just Luke, Cody, and Ryan and Jared and the rest of our team. Almost everybody, I think, that covers and talks about this team expressed concern that they didn't do enough for this offense in the offseason.
The counter to that is going to be, well, you're just a fan. You don't know everything.
Sure.
You're not in the front office.
And I know what your counter to that, even your counter is.
Oh, let's hear it.
I'm allowed to be wrong. I don't get paid
Exactly.
millions of dollars to make these decisions. I'm not the one that put together a $215 million mid baseball team. That'd be Jed Hoyer.
No, man.
It
they're
doesn't
right
matter
below
if
that.
I'm
They're
wrong.
they're
And at the moment,
230.
Brendan, you and I are not wrong. We spent all offseason saying this offense wasn't going to be good enough. They were going to be inconsistent, and they did not move the needle enough to be sure that they could avoid exactly stretches like this.
I think there's a group of fans who I talk with that give more credit to front offices in general than in reality. The point I just said to you, what do you know? You're not in the front office. What we do know for a fact is that the projections you and I talk about are marginally worse than the internal projections. That is An absolute fact. I have absolute evidence of that. Then, how the front office interprets that information and that degree of error in their decisions is what separates the front offices. Each front office, from a win projection standpoint, has basically the same type of system, the same type of projection. My frustration is that the way the front office proceeded with this group of players is understanding that being a mid 80s win team is likely going to come with a potential outcome of what we're seeing now. Now, this outcome is worse than what you would expect, but the likely outcome was at 500 to slightly below 500. And the Cubs proceeded spending money just before the luxury tax to meet that type of expectation. They'll be judged on that. How they develop their players, the decisions they make to get to that point, they will be judged on that. Of course, I don't know the intricacies of front offices and player development and player decisions, but generally speaking, we have the same access to information about what the error in projections are. It's entirely fair to judge and question the front office. And I don't want to sugarcoat that whatsoever. That's why, in one sense, I do get a little frustrated at that sect of fans who give more credit to the front office. This is not rocket science, Corey. This is baseball. This is baseball with a huge degree of error and uncertainty. And what the front office decided to do was enter the season as an 84-win team, not touch that first tier of the luxury tax to account for the worst-case outcome. That way they don't start that cycle. And that worst-case outcome is kind of what we're seeing now. There's a real possibility that they're going to go into July, if this continues, and not make trades. Even if they're 4 games back of the wild card, whatever it is, 2 to 4 games back. That's a very real possibility. And that's going to piss off a lot of fans, understandably so. And then there's another side of it. If they end up going over that tier, that first tier of the tax, then you can criticize, well, why didn't you do that in the offseason? If you were always intent to go over the first tier of the tax at the deadline, even as a below 500 team, then why didn't you do that in the offseason to prevent a situation like this from happening? We'll see where we are. We're jumping ahead from the trade deadline talk now, but it seems like we're entering that discussion. And at this point, if I'm going to bet money on what the likely outcome is, given what we're seeing, I would probably say this front office is running out of time. And it's unfortunate.
We'll see. I know there's a lot. We got to hit our first ad break here, and then we'll come back and talk some more. But I know I've seen it a lot from friend of the podcast, Matt Clapp, on Twitter, at the Blog Finds on Twitter. He should start paying me for shouting him out. No. Love Matt. But he said it a lot. Like, we're going to learn a lot about Tom Ricketts. There's a lot of narratives about Tom Ricketts that have been out there. But if this continues, we are going to learn a lot about him, because there is that sort of pervasive narrative that they're content. Listen, all weekend I was there. I walked straight home to do this show from beautiful historic Wrigley Field. Beautiful day, 80 in Chicago. Unfortunately, the team on the field not befitting of the beautiful environment that we have at the friendly confines. But 40,000 people there today. I was there on Saturday as well. 40,000 people. It's full. Standing room only. You walk in, people standing against the railing. Standing room only crowds, Brendan. There's the narrative that that's fine by him. The team is 2 games out of the wild card. Doesn't matter how many games under 500 they are. Doesn't matter if they're in a race with 8 different teams and the Brewers are running away with the division again in a division, and you haven't won a playoff game in 6 years. 6 years?
7 years.
7 years. They made the playoffs in 2018.
You got to count on your fingers, that's what happens. Yeah.
So there's that narrative that's fine by him. As long as they're loosely competitive and 40,000 people show up to watch the Cubs and Cardinals, who cares? We're going to find out if that's true, if this continues. Because right now, if I was an owner, even if you and I have argued plenty that I wish they went over the luxury tax every year, I wish they spent $400 million and always made sure they were a World Series favorite and settled for nothing less. But right now, if I'm Tom Ricketts, I'm looking at this, as we've said, and saying this is an expensive mid team. And I shouldn't be paying that much to be 4 or 5 games under 500. I'm looking around the league, and there's plenty of teams that can sit 5 games under 500, and their payroll is not $220 million. That's if I was Tom Ricketts. And I would say, even thinking that he's as cheap as possible and he doesn't actually care about being a juggernaut and winning the World Series, just thinking on those lines, I would say, man, I could be this middling for a lot less.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
So we will see if that is true. If he continues along this path and we get the same stuff at the trade deadline or at the end of the season, if this continues the same way, oh, well, we're always committed to winning, but it's a process and we're growing our farm system. If we continue to hear that, then there's your answers on how this organization operates and is going to operate. But this feels like a real inflection point for a lot of those kind of thoughts and narratives. Like, let's see, Tom, is this acceptable? Because we're in year, 3.5 of the retool, whatever you want to call this. We were promised it would be fast. We focused on the pipeline and getting more top prospects. And you're not seeing those results at the MLB level. So how many years is that acceptable? 3, 4, 5? What are we talking? So we're going to learn how this organization really thinks and feels if this type of play continues for much longer.
Let's do the ad break. We'll come back around, maybe talk about some more, player specifics. Screw this team, Corey. This team is pissing me off right now. I love talking about this team. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to announce that Smooth Sack Summer is officially upon us. Thanks to our friends at Manscaped, you can make this season your smoothest yet. The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra is the ultimate bundle to keep your boys downstairs cool while looking hot. Join the 10 million men worldwide who just trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Get 20% off plus free shipping when you go to manscaped.com and use code CHGO. Summertime and the trimming is easy. Get 20% off plus free shipping with code CHGO at Manscaped. That's 20% off plus free shipping with code CHGO at manscaped.com. It's Smooth Sack Summer, boys. Get on board or get left behind. Some beers can say they're brewed for baseball, but only Blue Moon is brewed by baseball. Beer and baseball just go together, and there's no beer better than the one that was literally born in a ballpark. From its refreshing flavor with Valencia orange peel for a subtle sweetness and hints of coriander, Blue Moon Belgian-style wheat ale is a one-of-a-kind beer that's made brighter. Bring the ballpark to you with Blue Moon Belgian-style wheat ale. It's one of a kind every time. Get Blue Moon delivered by visiting get.bluemoonbeer.com/CHGO to see your delivery options. That's get.bluemoonbeer.com/CHGO. Blue Moon, made brighter. Celebrate responsibly. Blue Moon Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
All right, Brendan. Before we continue, and I think I've shown it on the show before, but I just to talk about this, something other than this team. But first, I do want to say Happy Father's Day to everybody out there. If you're staying with your father, if your father's no longer with us, you have a strange relationship, whatever it is, there's all sorts of things. So
well, you're going
Happy Father's Day to those celebrating. Hope you're enjoying your day. If you're not celebrating, whatever you're doing today, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Appreciate you all joining us on this Sunday. I am going to ask for one favor from the chat. Got a little over 100 people in here. Hit that like button for us. It's 80 degrees in Chicago. I could be at the lake, and I have to talk about this Cubs offense.
Oh, poor you. Poor Corey has to talk to me on a Sunday on Father's Day.
No, it's not that I'm talking to you. It's that I have to talk about this mid-offense and how bad they are with runners in scoring position. So I'm going to see if the camera can pick this up, but it's in this box. And I think I've shown this before, but this guy.
Look at that. Look at that. We got Mark Pryor in the middle right there. I can see the Cavs. Got Moises Alou in the bottom left.
There's
Who's
roster.
On the bottom right? Top right,
bottom
Sammy.
Right.
Bottom right. Is that Mark Grudzielanek?
I can't really see.
Yeah, it's Mark Grudzielanek. Look at that.
That kind of looks like Ramon Martinez, brother.
Is it Ramon Martinez?
That's who it looks like.
Yeah, kind of hard to tell.
Alou, Zambrano, Sosa, Wood, Pryor.
If there's
Kenny Lofton?
Here's an optimistic statement.
Sure.
The 2003 Cubs were hovering around 500, around July-ish, you know. They ended up almost making the World Series. It's possible, Corey, right? That's what my optimistic side of my brain would say. My pessimistic side, I'm not going to say what I'm going to say. But if there's room for optimism, there we go. 2003 and 2007
You
too.
think that so that team wins 88 games, if I'm not mistaken. You think
Yeah.
this team can get there?
Are you kidding me right now? Absolutely not. If I have 5 more blue moons, maybe, but right now, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I don't know, man. It's just exceedingly frustrating.
I
That's
have
all
one.
I
I
got.
have one thought though. I keep seeing it
Sure.
in the chat.
Hit me.
I see it a lot, and I do want to talk about it because I was thinking about it today.
Craig Counsell.
Well, we can talk
The
about
chat's
Council
talking about
too.
that. I do kind of want to ask you about that, but go
That's
ahead.
fine.
Sorry.
But there's a sentiment of frustration with the big signings. I get it. Dansby Swanson, Ian Happ. They get a lot of the anger from fans. In addition with Seiya Suzuki. I think those contracts are high contracts. Dansby around 177, Seiya at 85, Ian Happ at 60, all of them making a minimum of $20 million annual average value. I think in a vacuum, those deals make sense. Those are deals likely to match your value. But this team's not a vacuum. There's a hidden cost to distributing $20 million contracts across the entire roster.
Yeah.
The cost is you inch towards that luxury tax. And if your roster doesn't take the next step, some of those contracts you give out take the next step, then you're paying for an average team because you're paying those guys to be average players. The average dollar per WAR, if you believe in all that, whatever, that's your philosophy, but it's about $10 million per one win. An average baseball player makes, from free agency is given around $18-20 million per year for an average free agent. That's what the Cubs are paying these guys to be. Of course, you want to be above league average. When Jed Hoyer signed Bellinger, Seiya, Ian Happ, extended Nico, all these guys, it was under the assumption that two things would happen. The first is Seiya would exceed his $85 million contract. Has not happened yet. The second option was pre-arbitration players come up and provide significant value. That has not happened yet. We can talk about Morel's expected stats, but at the end of the day, currently, he's been replacement level with 0.1 WAR. So the bet that Jed made is not paying off. Currently, it can pay off, but currently it's not paying off. In the vacuums, the deals make sense, but in reality, there's an intention to pay those guys with a better than expected projection. And it hasn't happened. And Jed even said that going into the year, these guys will have to outperform their projections to make the playoffs. Ultimately, that may decide their fate. All this is to say, I understand the ire at Dansby, at Ian, at Seiya, because quite frankly, those contracts do stop decisions from being made. Canario getting playing time, maybe, as one example. Other outfielders, Owen Casey in AAA. It does have a hidden cost when you distribute those contracts across the roster.
I agree. And I think, I think those contracts make sense in a vacuum, but it's how you build the team around it. If you're not going to build the stars and your prospects don't immediately and quickly develop into those stars, it's exactly as we've said. It's an expensive, bloated, middling roster with no stars and no, true superstars, that really deserve those bigger contracts. Some of these guys are great role players. You swap them into other Cubs rosters in past years, they are perfect guys to hit in certain spots of the order, to add diversity to that lineup, to play better defense than some guys. But as it stands right now, you just have a bunch of slightly above average at the moment, performing at slightly below average rates. But at best, you have some slightly above average players, but there's no stars. It's what we've talked about so much. In addition to that, you have a lot of money tied up in guys to be good, not great players if they're playing at their best. And then as you railed on them for all of last year and coming into this year, you have a lot of money tied up in dead weight. You're still paying guys like Trey Mancini and Tucker Barnhart. You're paying Kyle Hendricks an awful lot of money. You're paying Drew Smiley an awful lot of money. He's been pretty good as a multi-inning relief guy. He got out there this weekend. Like, sure, it's
But for
fine, but you're paying him a
$10 million,
lot for that privilege. Like, that's the problem. So you're paying a bunch of guys that are not stars. You're wasting money. You've been bad on a lot of those marginal signings, not all of them, right? You look at some of those things, not a marginal signing, but you look to have hit the jackpot on Shota versus spending exponentially more on Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who hasn't been as good as Shota and now is dealing with a triceps injury. So we'll see how that goes. So that looks like a great decision. Seiya has been inconsistent, but looks like good value for what you signed for, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah.
But yeah, like, and I mean, that's a good point from Chicago dude, quadruple eight there in the YouTube chat, $72 million. I don't know the exact contracts of Judge and Soto, but 94 million for Dansby, Cody, Seiya, and Hap. Like, it's pretty telling. There's choices of how to spend your money. And again, we can get into the Ricketts thing and all of that, but Jed has a lot of money to work with. He took over a great situation in 2021. I think that's fair to start with. There was a lot of decisions to be made. It was also a bloated, expensive roster with guys you had to make decisions on. And as we've discussed, he looks to be correct in moving on from all of those people from the core, except for Wilson Contreras, is the only guy who was performing really well after being traded or let go by the Cubs. Kyle, Schwarbs is his own thing. I don't feel like getting into that argument.
We can if you
now.
want.
But the point remains. But you look at it now, he's got a lot of money to work with, and this is another season where we're in June, they're under 500, we're talking about them underperforming and waiting for a run or a streak or something to lift them out of this and save this portion of the season. That's a tricky thing to count on. It would be nice to watch just a good baseball team, Brendan, a well-constructed, good baseball team. And I ask again, what is the threshold that it's acceptable for this ownership group? When is that going to happen? Maybe this team turns it around. Maybe they sneak into a wild card spot. The offense starts to perform better. Cody Bellinger gets hot, performs like last year. Dansby gets his OPS up into the mid or upper 700s. Nico, who we didn't even talk about that, but he's obviously hurt, and they are playing him through it. And he's lifting the ball a lot, which is really frustrating. It's just not. A few of those swings today, just not his swing. But I'm assuming he's playing through an injury because the Cubs love doing that. It's just something that they are dead set on doing, playing a man down and having guys play through stuff. Maybe that all happens, Brendan. But how long until we get a season where we're not waiting for that? They're just good. They're just a well-constructed, good baseball team that plays well on a daily basis, because it's been years since we've seen that.
The discouraging trend is that requires pre-arbitration valuable guys. And our 3 top pitching prospects are all injured right now. That would take those roles. Ben Brown, Jordan Wicks, Kate Horton. You may not even see that this year. Now, how does that influence decision-making next year? Because you will have to account for not having those innings fulfilled, regardless of injury or not, because you are now unable to have the same level of anticipated confidence for 2025 as a result of not giving those guys innings. That's the risk with all of this. And then we start looking at the contracts you mentioned, with the $94 million with Dansby, with Seiya, and with Bellinger. Those guys are front-loaded value type guys. What I mean by that is the overall annual average values are around 25 to 30 million, but the anticipated outcome is, as you get towards the back end of their contracts, they're not going to be as valuable as they were up front. So you kind of you pay a little bit more upfront for better than 3 WAR, even though the average expected WAR per year is 3 years, 3 WAR per year. So the problem now is, by not going full throttle and thinking there's room to fill these roles with pre-arb guys, if that doesn't happen, now you have aging contracts, 33, 34 years old, that you're paying for those roster spots. You can't just like cut bait with them. Now at the same time, you're also not able to fill those roles with those pre-arb guys with a high degree of confidence. So then what? That is the point at which front offices get fired, where you don't have the immediate group to fill those value holes, and at the same time you have dead weight contracts who are providing more harm than value in the form of eating salary. That's how owners move on when they see that. Will Tom make that decision in the offseason? Well, I still think it's too early to say right now.
Yeah.
As doom and gloom as that sounds, it's still technically still early to make that call. It just appears as if we're on that trajectory unless we have another extreme turnaround, as we even had last season. We're at the same point last season, but if there's any history to suggest that it will be different this trade deadline, there is none. We didn't go past the trade deadline in the luxury tax last year. What makes the front office and the ownership group believe that this team is the one to do it on when it's the same exact projection and essentially the same exact roster 1 year older, with guys who are now injured not being able to fulfill those pitching pre-arb roles? It's the
Yeah.
same picture, Corey.
Yeah. So another fun stat from our guy at CHGO, Jake Flanagan. He dropped in our CHGO Cubs chat May 5th. Can you guess what that was the last time the Cubs did something, Brendan? What do you think happened on May 5th, and that was the last time we've seen them do it?
Hit 3 home runs in one game.
No. It is
May 5th?
the last time that the Chicago Cubs won consecutive games against a team that is not named the Chicago White Sox.
Well, there you go. Who'd they beat? Do we even know? Don't worry about it. I don't even care anymore.
Look. I have the calendar up.
Okay.
May 5th. It was the Brewers, actually.
Brewers. Look at that. Look at that.
Yeah.
All downhill since then.
It's one of those things where, again, it does feel like simply getting a slightly better offensive production. It doesn't seem like it's asking a lot, because at this point it's nothing that you're getting from this offense. Could turn you're playing so many one-run games. The margins are so thin. A little bit from the offense could turn some of these games into wins, and you start to have at least a better stretch of baseball. But as we've talked about, we read those numbers since the end of April. You look at their series record, since the beginning of May. It is very difficult to disguise the fact that they're not just kind of bad, Brendan. Their starting staff has been really good, and some of the guys in the bullpen have been good as well. But you look at how they've performed relative to the rest of Major League Baseball, how they've performed against competition in their own division. And this is not just 2 weeks. This is getting close to 2 months of performing like this. Just because it could get better, and it's not crazy to ask Dansby Swanson to up his OPS by 100 points, or Ian Happ, because they've done it before. Just because it's not crazy doesn't mean that it's still difficult to kind of sugarcoat.
It's not enough.
When it's difficult to sugarcoat any other conclusion. You said it before. If you were trying to explain this team to someone who didn't really follow the team and didn't really know baseball that well, or stats or anything, if you gave them kind of those little outlooks and said anything other than, well, this has kind of been one of the worst teams in the league for the last couple months, they'd think you were lying to them. How could you sugarcoat that any other? Well, they're not, because they just lose by one a lot, and their ears can turn it around. Great, the results are the results, man. Yeah, and you're at the bottom of the barrel in a lot of these categories.
And Christopher Morel's expected WOBA was actually 100 points higher. Yeah. So bear with me. We're going to get back to winning games. Yeah. Don't worry about the defense. It's okay. It was a good decision all along, right? Yeah. That's the frustrating realities that we're faced with. You got to call a spade a spade
sometimes, man. You got to see the results on the field. And this team has been, especially, on the offensive side, one of the worst in the league. That's what it is.
My favorite part about Craig Counsell so far is I can use his phrases to justify my frustration on this podcast. The key phrase that you and I have said all year: frankly, we just need results. We've heard Council say this time and time again. We've heard him say it even about World Series champion Kyle Hendricks. Frankly, we need results. I use that phrase now, and I'm not feeling, meatball-y to say it. Frankly, we need results. I don't care about expected numbers, Corey. I say that maybe as a numbers guy. I don't care. I don't want to leave anything up for chance.
Yeah.
I don't want to have an argument say, oh, well, it's expected numbers, so we're going to be okay. No, I want to build a roster where your expected numbers don't have that much of an effect in a negative way. I want to make up for any nonsense, any BS, everything possible going into the year as an 84-win team accepts that nonsense.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, that is what I will always go into talking about this team with my frustration. 84 wins. I can be delusional. I can be optimistic that they're gonna exceed that 84 win projection. I'm a fan. I'm allowed to do that. But the reality is baseball is so stupid that as a front office executive, you should never leave your job up to that chance. That's a bad decision. That's bad process. And for the fourth year, we're seeing them play on these margins, dude. And maybe I sound like I'm on repeat, and I feel as if to some degree I am, but I feel like I'm taking crazy pills sometimes when I hear different pressers and press conferences and the words from Jed and all of this, because it's like, dude, everyone has the same type of projection and expectation, and front offices operate differently. Dombrowski in Philadelphia, same capacity to make decisions on these types of margins. His strategy, pay up front. Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, etc. Let me do the ad break here because we're going off the rails.
I just want to add one point here before we do this second ad break. All offseason, I said, I don't necessarily care who they sign. I don't care what moves they make. I had one ask. If you listen to our shows, I repeated it a lot. The one thing I asked for after years of this, not a rebuild, quick retool, very quick. Quickest retool I've ever seen. Only takes 3-4 years, right? All I asked for was to build a roster that was the prohibitive favorite in the NL Central. A division that at the time, and I think coming into the year, didn't have a team projected over, 85 wins? Something like that? 86 wins?
Yeah.
Not only did they not do that, they were not the prohibitive favorite in their own division. They weren't the favorite in their own division. They were not a prohibitive favorite to make the playoffs. Brendan, they landed at exactly the win projection that got the last team into the playoffs last year. They were not even solidly, no questions asked, a roster that had to make the playoffs. You go back and look at like 2017 or some of those years where the Cubs come out the gate, they kind of struggle a little bit. They're around 500. They're kind of all over the place. That was 2017, right? Not 2018.
Who knows? They all blend together.
They all blend
2017.
Together. You guys know what I'm talking about. It took them a while to like get going and get over 500, et cetera, et cetera.
2017.
That team just won the World Series.
That people.
And you could look at that team and realistically say, this is going to get better. They have stars in this lineup. They're slow out the gate, but this is going to get better.
Yeah.
This team is not coming off winning the World Series. And you're not able to look at this lineup and surely say, no, they'll be better. Hold on. Like, you just have to wait. They're just struggling. It happens in baseball. It's just a bad stretch. They'll get better. And they did. They were. You can't do that with this team. And so it's just so frustrating. This was always the concern, and we're just living in it day by day, watching this awful brand of baseball. And the one thing we didn't talk about, I saw somebody, I think you are the creator, said it in the YouTube chat. You go back to this week, I don't have the total in front of me. I think it was 4 or 5 of the runs they scored this week were on bunts or swinging bunts that barely got past the pitcher's mound. That's how they're scoring their runs.
Crazy.
It's pathetic.
But Corey,
Brendan.
hold on. Good teams blow teams out.
Yeah.
Just be patient. We'll eventually blow those teams out.
Good teams bunt and
Good
hit the ball barely past the pitcher's mound to mercifully score 2 runs a game.
All right, let me do this ad break here. We're going off the rails, but it's okay. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets, even for the NBA Finals, Corey. You want to go to that last game of the Finals, perhaps? Well, Game Time is your avenue to get those tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I've used Game Time, by the way, several times. If I have an issue, I can call customer service and they get back to you pretty fast. I've had experiences in the past with different vendors. It's hard to get them on the phone. At the very least, if there's a problem, I can contact Game Time. I know I'm going to get resolved right away. So again, $20 off, code CHGO. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. For your new Chevy, make Ray Chevrolet your first draft pick. Visit our partners this June to shop their summer sales event going on all month long at Ray Chevy and Route 12 in Fox Lake and at raychevrolet.com. As one of the top selling Chevy dealers in the Midwest, you'll always be able to shop one of Chicagoland's largest Chevy inventories. Plus, find the perfect tailgate vehicle right now. Get $12,000 off MSRP on a new 2024 Chevrolet Silverado, or lease the new 2024 Chevy Trax for only $179 a month for 24 months, or cruise into June your own way and shop over 125 of their vehicles priced under $20,000. And if you've ever heard of Ray Chevrolet, then you've also heard of Ray's Price Promise, their guarantee to make your next vehicle more affordable than ever, with no price changing, no add-ons, and no hidden fees ever. That means the incredible prices we're talking about now, you can expect to see the very same when you shop Ray Chevy in-store or online. Shop the summer sales event all month long by visiting Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake or raychevrolet.com. They've been serving the community since 1963. Together, let's drive.
All right, Brendan. I don't know, man.
I know.
I don't know.
I mean,
So,
if there's one optimistic thing, maybe Justin
sure.
Steele. He looks great.
Yeah.
You know, throwing different pitch types, more changeups, more sinkers. He looks good.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about you and Ryan Herrera did a great article over at allchgo.com. Justin Steele kind of tweaking his repertoire a little bit. We'll talk a couple positives, and then we'll end with a sort of thought provoking question of the week,
Okay.
if you will. That's not specifically positive.
Okay. Well, let's do it. I'm going to show a graph here because we got
Sure.
people. I try to give one graph a week. Right now, I'll be frank. It's hard to make graphs when the team sucks this much. Like I'm not motivated to make graphs.
Yeah.
That's when you know I'm depressed about this team. But we did a story. Ryan Herrera and I did a story. We talked with Justin Steele himself and Tommy Hotovy, and the question was, why are you throwing more changeups and sinkers? Justin Steele, over the past year and a half, threw over 95% of his total pitches as four seams and sliders. He started to throw more sinkers and changeups. Why is he doing this? Tommy Hotovy said, starting around 2023 last year, they were changing his grip on his changeup. And over bullpen sessions, in between starts, he's grown comfortable with the pitch. And now he's throwing changeups and sinkers in just 10% of his pitches, but he's getting swings and misses on 2 strike counts. And Tommy Hotovy said, to paraphrase, he believes Steele's changeup will be a real weapon. That's a huge vote of confidence. So why is he throwing changeups more, and why is he getting better results? He threw changeups and sinkers in 2021, did not get good results. The reason is because they changed the grip and the way the ball and the seams move. And Steele has a natural cut fastball, right? The problem with that is you don't want your sinker to cut. You want your sinker and changeup to tail. So they changed the grip, and they're making his natural mechanics with a grip change a little bit like a hack. And he's able to generate more seam shifted wake and have the pitch fade a little bit more. So now what you're seeing here on the graph, anything to the lower right means the changeup is dropping and fading away to right-handed batters. So if you look at this heat map, imagine that you're in the right-hander's batter's box. So when you see anything more to the bottom right, that means the pitch is moving down and away from you. In 2021, you can see that there's like a bullseye right there. That represents not enough fade, not enough drop. 2022, same deal. 2023, you started to notice Steele was using more drop on his changeup, but he barely threw the pitch. And now you look at 2024, you're seeing more drop and actually more shift towards the right-handed side, and you're seeing more fade. Now, if you look at what that looks like, if you're in the right-hander's batter's box, here's what it is. Black pitch is his changeup in 2021, 2022. Red is his changeup this season. Obviously, the red looks like it's fading a little bit more, and these pitches end up in this exact same like location. So this is showing that Steele is able to actually have more fade and drop on his pitches, which is what you want. So this continues. He has another pitch type. The four seam's still playing up. The slider's still playing up, and now he can use a sinker, a changeup sparingly. Maybe if he grows more comfortable with it, he can increase the frequency. But you want someone with Steele's repertoire to continue to adapt, because over age span, rarely do you see two pitch guys survive. The reason you've seen Verlander survive, Scherzer survive, even Kershaw survive is because they've developed new pitch types. Kershaw developed a cutter over the past 5 years, and Steele likewise may need to develop a third type of pitch, and we're seeing that, and it's very encouraging. So there is room for optimism despite all this nonsense going on.
Yeah, Steele's been great. I know I saw Tyler in the YouTube chat saying, I don't know if Tyler was talking about the playoffs, but if you could sneak into the playoffs, Shota 1, Steele 2, whichever order you want to go. It's a
All
tough,
right, now we're
tough
getting
rotation,
crazy over here. Now we're getting crazy.
Well, hey,
In our
trying to
alternate
highlight
reality.
the positives. I think Michael Busch, another positive.
Yeah.
125 WRC plus looks good. K rate pretty high, 33.5. So you're going to want that to come down at some point. But for a guy getting extended run, really for the first time in his career beyond what he got in experience with the Dodgers, looks like a pretty solid trade at the moment. Again, he's fitting into that mold. Other guys are not playing to this level of like good but not great at the moment. But hey, if you can make a trade for a cost-controlled guy that's able to come over and have success here as an offensive contributor, it's a solid start, for someone who obviously was a big question mark coming into the year.
Yeah, Bush has been great. I think once we get more understanding of how he goes about his plate approach and his batted ball profile, I think will start to make sense. I keep mentioning this, but he reminds me, not apples to apples, but he reminds me of Chris Bryant in the fact that they both had unorthodox swing planes. And what I mean by that is with Bush, he has like slow bat speed for a long swing, and it doesn't make sense to me because he's having success. Bryant had the same thing, and that was one reason why the Giants did not extend him. They didn't like his swing profile, and the Giants were, I guess, right. But with Bush, you saw it today. Blue pit, knocked another run. You see blue pits all across the diamond. And then there's times where he just hits moonshot home runs, right? So that's the interesting part about Bush. Defensively, I still need room for improvement. We're seeing Bellinger play first base more, which is fine, and I think justifiable with PCA backup. But like Morel, he needs a defensive home. And like Morel, they need to perform really highly offensively to justify that DH spot or those growing pains at the defensive level. So Bush has been great, don't get me wrong, but like it's hard to be super optimistic when the entire team just needs someone to go way beyond even that, which is what Bush is producing right now.
Yeah. All right. So let's wrap with a thought-provoking question.
5 minutes. 5 minutes.
And you can answer it how you'd like, but I've seen the chat discussing it, and there's not going to be a real answer to this. But when you look at this team, there was a lot of discussion made, of course, when the Cubs made the decision to let David Ross go, to pay a lot of money to make Craig Counsell the highest paid manager in the league. When you look at this, how do you balance, they made a big change in manager, but the result looking very similar, in some ways better, some ways worse, however you want to look at all that. Are you putting most of your ire, if you will, on the players themselves? Is it Craig Counsell? And, were we too hard on David Ross and it's all the players? Is it Jed for putting the managers in this position? Before I throw it to you, I will start with at least my caveat. Craig Counsell's a better manager than David Ross. David Ross made a lot of stupid decisions. I, Craig needs to get some of this cleaned up. Like we talked about the defense, base running, stuff like that. Like he's the bucks with him, and he can't go out and hit for these guys. Neither could David Ross. So the comparison of the two, you can argue how much they get paid, et cetera, but Counsell's better than Ross, in my opinion. I thought Ross made a lot of stupid decisions that I don't think Craig makes. But when you look at this, like, do you put most of it on Jed? Does that let the players off the hook for not performing? Does Counsell need to do something to get a spark? How do you kind of square all of this? Does it not matter? The sun is going to engulf the earth at some point, and none of this matters. What do you think about that? Because the chat is a little divided. There's some folks that are, very squarely in the camp of like Counsell wasn't worth it, or we were too hard on Ross, or it's all on the players. The players aren't performing. Craig can't hit for them. Talk to them. What do you think?
You want Counsell to be a miracle worker? I just read to start this podcast, they're last in batting average, last in slugging percentage, and last in weighted on base average over the past 1,000 plate appearances. We need a miracle worker as manager to make that work. Here's where I am with the manager decision. Ultimately, they get paid their expected value. Okay, Ross was getting paid $2 million. Yes, Counsell is the highest paid manager, but it's $8 million. Okay, if it's a marginal upgrade, even a marginal upgrade, it's an extra $6 million. Relatively speaking, for these baseball operations, that's pennies. So if there's even a marginal improvement, it makes sense. Am I happy with Counsell's job? I mean, I would like to see the team hit for more base hits. I'm not going to say, oh, Counsell's doing a great job, but at the same time, I can't even tell because you're last in every offensive category over your past 1,000 plate appearances. I like what Counsell says to the media at times, but I don't know if that's reflective of his process. I like what the coaches say they work with Counsell in improving their decision making. I like all of that, but it's still too early to tell. But where I come away with, I don't think the managers matter that much. I think they have an effect, don't get me wrong, but they get paid what they think they are worth from the front office point of view. And a $6 million difference between the two is pennies, dude. Absolute pennies. We're talking about like Drew Smyly gets paid $10 million. Okay. Counsell gets paid $8 million versus $2 million. It's whatever. At the end of the day, the front office needs to make better decisions, as what Jed says, stacking good decisions upon good decisions. They stacked a lot of good decisions that have been fallen over by bad decisions. It hasn't been good enough from a baseball or organizational point of view. Yeah, Counsell is part of that, but it's hard to tell what he's doing right and what he's doing wrong when the team at large is this bad.
Yeah, I mean, look, for me, it would be a longer conversation if you were deep diving into the managers and stuff like that. Like I said, just my opinion, but I think Counsell manages laps around David Ross. Disagree, agree, all you want. That's just my opinion. What I would say is my ire at the moment is on Jed for building an offense that wasn't good enough. And then slightly below that, it's on the players, man. Like some of these guys are not performing well enough. Hap, Dansby, and even we've talked about Dansby not being a guy you're relying on for offense. He's below that. Hap is below where he needs to be. Cody Bellinger performed, did the short-term deal again. He's not performing to that same level. That's where my ire is. It's also on Jed Hoyer for this mess of a catching tandem. You and I were texting. I think it really sums things up a little bit. We were debating when they should have pinch hit for Miguel Amaya because he came up twice with, key situations late in the game on Sunday. Should you have done it the first time, but then Gomes would have had to come in, and then you can't pitch hit for Gomes?
It's kind of funny in retrospect, right?
It's a mess.
It's a mess.
The fact that we're having that conversation is an utter mess.
Yeah.
Like which spot is the most consequential to pinch hit your dreadful hitting catcher for the other dreadful hitting catcher to come in and then not be able to be replaced? It's just a mess. Yeah. So to me, it's on Jed. Like that's where the primary frustration comes in. As you've said a bunch, this roster had certain outcomes that they accepted. And they accepted the risk and the high probability of that risk.
At the end of the day,
So
that's what they'll be judged on.
that's it. But I do expect, like, these conversations are going to heat up. Like I said, we're going to learn more about how Tom Ricketts views this timeline, how he views what is acceptable from this organization, what isn't acceptable. We're going to hear more about, is Jed on the hot seat? What do people think about that? And you are going to hear more if they, whether it's right or wrong. The conversation is absolutely going to turn and continue to be, you paid $8 million to steal the Brewers manager, and they're running another lap around you. Whether it's right or wrong, that will be part of the conversation, and we're going to have to deal with it.
It
You and
is
I.
what it is.
So
It's this team is just so
it's very
frustrating.
frustrating.
It's frustrating because they're. I'll end it here, but it's frustrating because decisions get made with, I think, the front office having a better with the front office thinking they understand the margin of error. That's where I get frustrated on, because I don't feel as if their decisions reflect a real margin of error. I really don't believe that, because if they did, then I believe more aggression upfront in 2022, 2023, and 2024 would have been had, not middling around dispersing 18 to $25 million contracts, hoping that one or two exceed their value, and then you can supplement those guys with pre-arb cost controllable guys. And the developmental system is not bearing fruits yet either. There's potential for it. Don't get me wrong. I see the top 100 prospects, but you're not seeing those fruits bared yet. We still need to see PCA provide value, even though we're optimistic. Owen Casey, Kevin Alcantara has been struggling. Organizational wide, I don't know if this is necessarily reflective of their process, but organizational wide, from double A down, even from triple A down, they have the worst walk rate in organized baseball.
Oh, good.
That's crazy. Double A down, they have the 23rd best strikeout rate. Listen, I'm not a big understander of baseball front offices, but I think you should strike a lot of guys out if you're going to walk that many guys, right?
Yeah.
And so maybe there's refinement there to be had as well, even though we like the pitching infrastructure. But it reminds me, when I have these conversations with those who work in baseball, it reminds me of where we were in 2018 when I was being told, hey, man, people look at the Cubs and they laugh. I'm like, shut up. This is Theo Epstein. Like, that's not true. They're not falling behind. And it ended up them falling behind. So I'm a little worried that this may happen again. You're seeing heavy sweepers being used now and hitters adjusting. You're seeing the splitters come back. You're seeing teams start to make these unexpected changes yet again. And so, of course, the really negative thinking I have is, oh my God, the Cubs are falling behind again. And Jed, once again, is one of the main reasons for falling behind. I don't want this to happen. That's why I would be inclined to move on from the front office at the end of this year if this continues, without even thinking.
Yeah.
Snap my fingers, goodbye. Let's get someone else in.
Yeah. And just to finish up, I see it in our YouTube chat here. Again, thank you guys for being here on a Sunday live in the YouTube chat. If you're listening on your podcast later, we appreciate you too. Thank you for tuning in. It's a tough spot. We look at, I think Alexander Canario ended up leaving the game with maybe a minor injury yesterday. That was the last report I read. I apologize if that's outdated. But he had been on a tear. There's other guys that are doing well, Owen Casey, but where are you playing them? And it's one of those situations where I understand that people are going to say, well, this guy's got a 630 OPS. Just do that. Listen, guys, Dansby Swanson's going to play. Hopefully he gets healthy. Nico Horner's going to play. Ian Happ's going to play. Mike Tauchman leads your team in certain offensive categories. He's going to get his playing time. If PCA is up, they made the decision to bring him back up, he's going to play. You're going to have to deal with a rookie struggling, adjusting. He's young. It's going to happen. Seiya Suzuki is going to play. Cody Bellinger is going to play. They traded for Michael Busch. He's got a 125 WRC+. He's going to play. Yeah. Unless Owen Casey is going to strap on that mask and start calling pitches behind the plate, where are you putting him?
We can see if you can do it. Can't be that worse than what we're currently.
And again, I'm not necessarily arguing that is the right course of action, but you're paying these other guys. This is who you've built this team around. If you're Jed Hoyer, you're not just going to bench some of these guys. It's just not going to happen. Whether I wanted to or you guys wanted to, there's not a lot of spots. The guys that are on this roster are going to be the guys that have to get it done.
Yeah.
You may need to make some trades. You may need to move stuff around, but they're paying these guys. They built the team around some of these guys. They're going to play.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how they're going to do it, whether
Last
we all
comment.
like it or not.
Last comments, then you can sign off because I do have stuff to do.
Yep.
But Tyler said it. Change we need, but it doesn't mean we're going to get that right either. The grass is not always greener.
Yeah.
That's my fear because
Listen,
baseball
guys, things can get worse.
It can get worse, and baseball has grown so much where you have all these different departments and jobs, and if you get rid of a front office, you have to replace every one of those positions. It's a big ask, and so maybe it's not always greener, and that's one reason why you keep Shed. And I to some degree would understand that, even though I still would probably move on, but it can get worse. Believe me, it can get very worse, and we don't have, other than Ricketts capitalizing on Theo being available at a very unique time, we don't have much proof that Ricketts and the ownership group can identify someone that isn't a generational Hall of Fame executive like Theo Epstein at the time. So that's what I have.
Well, and one last thought on what I said. Twig Woodman saying in the chat, we shouldn't be tied to Tauchman because everyone else stinks. If he has the best on-base percentage on the team, when the offense stinks, I hear you. What I'm saying is for them to bench Tauchman and bring up Casey or one of these guys, I don't see them doing that. That's all I'm saying. I don't see them saying, you know what, this is the guy who's expendable, even though he's been one of the best hitters in this dreadful lineup. Like, I just don't see them doing that. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
Here's where we're going to end. You got 6 games left on this homestand. I said at the beginning of this homestand, I thought we might learn a lot about this team in that last game against the Rays and this 9-game homestand. What we've learned so far is that what we've seen for the last month and a half might be who they are, unfortunately. You have 6 games left on this homestand, 3 against the Giants Monday through Wednesday, off day Thursday, 3 against the Mets, culminating in, unfortunately for you and I, Brendan, Sunday Night Baseball next week. I don't know if you knew that yet, but I hate to break that news to you on air. These are teams that are right there in that wild card race. For a little bit, we were all looking at like, oh, wow, look how bad the Mets are. They're right there with the Cubs. I think they're a half game behind the Cubs. Giants, right there. I think one of the teams that you're chasing. So we talked about you're not taking care of business against the teams in the NL Central, other teams that you play a lot that are in that wild card race. Well, here are 2 more that are right there in the thick of that 8-team third place wild card race with you, the Giants and Mets. 6 games at home. If you're going to turn it around, you have got to start doing it. It has got to start now. You need to score runs. Please, I'm begging you, score runs on a consistent basis. Pay off this great work that your starting pitching staff is doing on a daily basis. Big week ahead. I never like to throw around must wins, things like that, because, here we are, they're 2 games out. Like, I don't know what the timing is for any of these decisions and anything. But if you can't take care of business on a 9-game homestand at home, which you've already started in a bad way against teams you're fighting for the playoffs in, even though it's only June, I don't know when you're going to turn it around, man, because the schedule is only going to get harder. The road trips only grow, and you get more tired and more into the dog days of summer and stuff like that. You got to take care of business at some point. Got to start to hit. We got to see it. So that, I think, is where we're going to leave you. Again, we appreciate you guys tuning in. It's a frustrating team, but as I always say, we're all Cubs fans. We might agree or disagree on a lot of this stuff, but at the end of the day, we love this team. We just want to see this team succeed, and I enjoy talking baseball with you guys, and we are happy to have you guys here in the chat. So go enjoy the rest of your Sunday. If you're listening to this on Monday, hope you have a good day. Enjoy your day at work, wherever the day might take you. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Brendan and I will talk to you next Sunday. Don't forget to tune in to the boys throughout the week, Luke, Cody, and Ryan. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon. And as always, go Cubs.
We all silly like the mayor.